What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and today we'll be customizing this plant. The goal is to create some sort of alien vegetation utilizing color layers and some random textures. Plus, we'll play around with some fun colors to really help bring this plant to life. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today, so without further delay, let's get into it. Jumping right into the scene, we are going to look here for a plant. So I'm just going to kind of scroll down, and I think with this one, if we could get something with a little bit bigger leaves, that's probably ideal. So let's go with this one here. We'll just import this real quick. So next up, I'm going to bring in a plane for our floor, and then I'm just going to copy and paste and kind of use this one as our backdrop here. So I'm gonna rotate that and just bring that back here. Next up, I'm just going to throw in a camera to kind of establish our perspective. So I'm just going to be in the Redshift camera here and just kind of move around the scene. Let me just go over, and I'm just going to crank up the perspective to about 200, just because it kind of gives us a nice zoomed in look where we can really concentrate on those details and textures that we're going to bring in here. So cool. So I'm going to bring up the Redshift render view here and press play, and then we're just going to kind of see what would be a fun perspective. We do have a little bit of flowers here, so we can always kind of set that up where we kind of have at least one shot of these flowers and then another shot kind of focusing a little bit more on the leaves here. So I'm going to bring in a dome light as well, just to kind of see the scene a little bit better, and then just kind of keep it real simple. We're just not going to plug in anything into our dome light, but just kind of use that as a nice lighting source. Next up, I'm going to bring in a Redshift material, and this is the material we're going to use to kind of colorize this plant here. So I think for our first shot, we're going to kind of zoom into some of these leaves on this plant. So I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, and then I'm going to throw on that material onto this plant here. And so as we apply it, you can see that that changes the color of the stems. So we at least know that that is that specific node. Let me bring in another Redshift material, and then we'll just use that one here for the leaves. Getting into the node editor, I'm just going to grab some textures from Grayscale Gorilla. So we're just going to go into some of these textures here, and you can kind of see that they have a wide variety of different textures. We'll just find some interesting ones here. This one looks pretty interesting, so I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to bring in my bump blender here, and then just kind of move this over, and then I'll plug that in, and then we'll plug this into the bump. And then we're just going to really bump up that blend weight to our layer here. Next up, I'm just going to pull a color layer up, and then we'll go back into our textures and then just kind of pick out a few different ones that kind of have a vegetation look to them. So these are kind of cool, and then they do have somewhat larger stains here as well, so that can be interesting, just to kind of create a few different splotches within the leaves there. So I'm going to just move this down, and I'm just going to plug that into our bump here. And then with this texture, I'm just going to plug this into the color layer. And same with this one as well. And then I'm just going to plug that into our material. I'm going to save it real quick. And then I'm actually going to remove that one and then just reattach it. But we're going to attach it to our base layer. And then I'm just going to drop down to blend mode, throw in difference here. And then I'm just going to go over to here and we'll try out this nice green here. And then I'm just going to use difference as well for our blend mode here. You could kind of see the effects within the stems there, but actually let me kind of move this out to the leaves so we can kind of see it a little bit better here. All right, so those are some of the textures that we plugged in there. So let me just kind of zoom in a little bit more so we can kind of see that a little bit better. So we can see a lot of these textures kind of layered on top of each other. You get these really nice kind of green veins that work down the plant here. And then you have a few of these different white spots as well. So we'll just kind of continue to play around with it and really just hone this in here. Next up, I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to remap this and just kind of see what it's like to rescale this image here. And then what I'm going to do is just go down to our layer 2 and I'm just going to change the color just a bit. We're trying to make this more of a alien exotic plant, and so I want to create something that is very extreme as far as what we're used to, something that, you know, may kind of be either in some sort of other world or some sort of different place besides Earth here. So I really think utilizing a lot of different blues and greens can kind of help kind of push that out, especially some of the more vibrant greens and blues that you typically don't find in vegetation very much. So next up, what I'm going to do is just kind of continue layering this. Just going to bring in this color layer. I like this because it has almost like a nice burn effect to it. So let me just turn on this color here. And so, yeah, so immediately you get that really nice detail within the texture there. And then you have these really cool looking effects now that we kind of layered these on top. You could kind of see that color pop in. So immediately that is a pretty cool base as far as colors go. I definitely want to kind of keep that burn look within the leaf there. I think that's a really cool texture or just kind of image in general to have onto the plant. I mean, it kind of insinuates that more exotic look. I think having more aspects like that would be really cool. So let me just go back in here and let's look at some of these bigger stains here. So let me bring in this one just to kind of create a little bit more variation within here. Let me actually just plug this into my bump. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of increase some of these bump inputs as well. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of exit out of here and throw in a Redshift tag here. And with our Redshift tag, we'll just enable displacement. And so you really can't see a big change within the render view here, but we're kind of just adding on some texture that we'll be able to see a little bit later when we're taking some of our final shots here. So next up, I'm just going to jump back into that material that we were working on. And then we're just going to kind of hop back into Grayscale Gorilla. I did like those big spots, so I'm just going to bring in another one. However, we're just going to plug that into our color layer, and then we're going to select color. And then I'm just going to jump down to our color layer and just turn that on here. And then immediately you could kind of see those spots on the leaves there. So let me just save it real quick. Let me change the blend mode to difference. And then with that, we kind of see the spots on top of that previous layer that we were looking at. Let me see what average is. and divide, exclusion, overlay. And that's kind of a cool look there with overlay. Let me just go back into color layer 1 and see if we can kind of change some of these colors here. Let me just change this to a purple here. And then with color layer 2, I'm just going to change the blend mode to difference. And then let me just shoot it back to normal here. Really with a lot of this is just kind of playing around with the different blend modes and a few different colors. And so if you have a specific color palette or a few colors in mind, you can always kind of play around with that. We originally started with a green and a blue here, but I think with that texture that brought in that nice burn effect, it really kind of brought in some interesting colors on top of what we were already working with. So we're really just kind of playing around with that, so it looks a little bit more organic, even though it's more of a like an exotic alien plant here. So, and then let me actually go down to our color layer 4. I'm just going to kind of change the strength of the mask there to 75. And then I'm just going to change the color layer 2 to 75 as well. And so let me give that a quick save. But so immediately you can kind of see a lot of those different textures. We get the nice variety of all 4 layers, and really just kind of playing around with that blend mode and even just playing around with the mask strength, you can get a lot of different looks. And so I think what's important for this is just kind of find a few different textures that you really like, and then you'll just kind of have to play around with it depending on again what you're trying to go for. But this is pretty nice so far because with all of those layers kind of stacked on top of each other, and it kind of brings a lot of details to this plant here. Let me kind of zoom in a little bit more so we kind of take a peek at those. So as you can see on the bottom part of this leaf here, you can see a lot of that bump that we added in originally at the beginning. And so it just adds a little bit of texture to the leaves, and that kind of brings it to life a little bit more. So again, layering all these textures, adding in a few different bump materials really kind of creates that organic look, and like it's an actual plant. So I'm liking how this is looking so far. I'm just going to apply this color to the rest of our leaves just so we could kind of see what this plant looks like all together. Let me just zoom out and then just kind of change our perspective. And so that is looking pretty cool. Even though we plugged in a lot of variety in general, I think we kind of need a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is just go into Grayscale Gorilla, grab one of these paints here, and I think a white backdrop would be pretty nice, especially since we have all this detail and dark colors. To really have some sort of glossy backdrop will kind of help make those colors pop out a little bit more. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste that material that we made a little bit earlier, and then we're just gonna kind of tweak this version here just to kind of create a little bit more variety. I'm just going to drop that material onto some of our other leaves, and then I'm just going to kind of play around with this mask. Let me drop this down to 0.5 here. And so immediately you can kind of see some of those leaves lighten up, and then we lose a little bit more of that pattern, but we're also kind of adding to the variety. But looking at it now, it is rather boring versus our other leaves. Our other leaves have have so much going on there. So let me just kind of continue to play around with this. Let me see what one looks like. So we get a bit more of a darker look there. Let me just actually drop that back. Let's do 0.80 here. And then I'll just go do a 0.6 here. And then let me just switch this to normal. And then I'm just going to kind of change this color here to more of a darker purple. And then I'm just going to kick this down to a 0.4. And then kick this up to a 0.7. So with kind of playing around with those, we brought in more of a darker set of leaves. However, we kind of toned it down a little bit so we can see a lot of those details within the leaf here, but we're kind of adding a little bit more variety. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of zoom into a nice perspective here. And then next up, I'm just going to pull up this material here, and then we're just going to find something simple in our textures here. Let's do this, and then with this material, we're just going to kind of colorize and kind of create a nice texture for those stems there. So I'm just going to bring in that one, and then that's definitely not a texture that you would see on vegetation, but we'll just kind of plug that in and see what that looks like. Of course, we are going to throw in a color layer as well. And I'm just going to kind of select this area that we're going to look at. Let me bring up a bump map, and then I'm just going to plug in this to our bump map, and then plug in our bump map to our material. And so you can kind of see a little bit that variation within the stem there, but actually let me do maybe one of these here instead. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, that one will pretty much be fine. And then I'm just going to plug in the other two here to our color layer. And then I'm just going to drop this one down to difference, and then this one as well. And then we're just going to throw in a color here. And then we're just going to plug that into our standard material. And so you could see it kind of has that blue look that we plugged in there, and a few variations. So it kind of looks like it's coming from the same plants as far as some of those colors go. So that is looking pretty good. Next up, I'm going to kind of zoom into some of these flowers here. So we're just going to kind of enhance these flowers again to just kind of match everything else that's going on within this plant. So I'm just going to get into the right perspective here. I think that is fine. Let me just grab a new material here. And then we're just going to jump into our node editor here. Of course, throw in a color layer. And then we're just going to grab a texture that is, of course, a little different here than what you would expect a flower to look like here. Going to plug it into our base layer. And then I'm just going to go over and change to more of a purple here, and then throw in difference, and then throw that onto our flowers there so we can kind of see what's going on. And same with this one. So we got this green with some of these purple dots and swirls here. So Let's go in and maybe find one more texture here. Let's do this gradient one. This could be interesting. Just going to kind of move this over. We're going to plug that in. And then turn on color layer 2. And so immediately that has a really nice effect there. And let's actually change that to difference for our blend mode. And then so we're seeing both of those textures and then those two colors we were just looking at as well. And then I'm just going to kind of lower the mask for layer 1. And then let me see what a blue would look like. And I'm just going to change this to normal. Let's see what add looks like. And then I'll change this to a blue. And really with the combination of the blue and the other color we had, it kind of creates a nice purple there. So that's really what we were looking for. And then I'm just going to throw in that stem color to these flowers here. So we have this nice interesting plant here. I think the colors really kind of go together quite nicely. You have a very cool look with a lot of those blues, the blacks, the purples as well. So you get this nice kind of cool variation here. So now I'm just going to find a few perspectives that's going to be interesting. So one shot we can do is just kind of zoom into these flowers here. And then we can also turn on bokeh as well. We could kind of create this nice visual depth within the render, just kind of make it a little bit more interesting. And then I'll really just kind of hone in some of our perspectives. And then, but yeah, that is pretty much it for this one. Again, the goal was to kind of play around with a few different color layers and textures to create some sort of organic life form that looks realistic, but looks like it's, you know, not from this planet here. I actually had a lot of fun with this one, just kind of customizing it and really just playing around with it. Hopefully you guys were able to learn something as well. Of course, these are some of the renders that I got, but really that was it for this one. I just wanted to kind of show you guys how to play around with a few textures and how to plug that into both color layers and a bump map blender here. But yeah, that was pretty much it for this one. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.